going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, or welcome this is your first time here. I have a question. How is it that so many people can see what's going on, can watch the nightly news, can look at the alternative media, can look at the politicians, listen to what they're saying, and not be prepping like crazy? It's obvious that hard times are here, but it's going to get much, much worse, yet people still refuse to prepare. And they look at us as some kind of loonies for actually trying to be ready for what we see is coming. And even a lot of Christians, they read the Bible, they apparently skip over the book of Revelation and don't pay any attention to that whole ordeal, or they've been convinced that there's going to be a pre-tribulation rapture and they're going to be taken out of here before anything bad happens, or if something bad happens, God will just bring them some food or whatever, because they don't need to prepare. Because I've even had people tell me that prepping was a show of a lack of faith in God. If you believe in God, if you have faith in God, you won't prep. You'll sit back and wait for God to bring you some food, because God won't let you starve. These people make all kinds of excuses, even though in the Bible, you know, it has different passages that instruct people to prepare, to be ready, to prep. But people refuse to listen. They can look at the national debt. They can look at the social issues here in the U.S. They can look at the racial issues here in the U.S. They can look at the perversion that's being taught in the schools. They can look at the proxy wars going on right now between NATO and Russia and Ukraine. They can look at all these things and see what's happening, and see a national debt of over $33 trillion heading to $34 trillion. And they still refuse to prep. They go to the store, and whereas they could buy before, 5 or 6 plastic bags full of groceries for $100, now they go in and they get maybe 2 for $100. They don't get it. They just don't. I don't understand why people don't prepare. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like they have normalcy bias and they refuse to listen, and they actually get hostile to people like us who are prepping and who try to get them to actually do something. I don't know if it's just normalcy bias or just laziness or what it is, or just pure stupidity on their part. But to me, it doesn't make any sense. How you can see everything going on right now, like I said, all the issues, all the national debt, all the personal debt, all the state debt, the homelessness, the wide open southern border, the new pandemic that's coming up that they've been pushing to the media. Everything. I mean, really, how can you not see what's happening and not be preparing like crazy? However, the vast majority of people, only a small percentage, are actually prepping, and the vast majority are twiddling the thumbs, doing nothing, and just, woo! I mean, it's amazing. It really is. But anyway, Mad Max conditions are coming. Desperation is rising as the economy rapidly deteriorates and food costs soar. At this point, most Americans are barely scraping by from month to month. And in poorer countries on the other side of the world, there are people that are literally starving to death. As I have detailed previously, the UN has reported that 2.4 billion, not million, but billion people did not have enough food to eat last year, and 900 million of them were facing severe food insecurity. Sadly, those numbers will inadvertently be even higher for 2023. A global rice crisis has erupted, and the collapse of the Black Sea grain deal has greatly restricted the flow of agricultural goods from that part of the globe. Food costs are spiking all over the planet, and that is really bad news for all of us. For those of us that live in the United States, the good news is that nobody is starving at this stage. I have to disagree with that. I mean, how does he know no one is starving in the United States? There's lots of people in the U.S., and I don't think Michael Snyder knows all these people personally and knows their financial situation or their hunger issues or what's in their pantry. How does he know no one is starving in the United States? I know for a fact, growing up, I went to bed hungry many, many times. I didn't starve to death, obviously. I'm here. So maybe it's what he means, no one is starving to death. And again, maybe, how does he know that to be a fact? But there's people definitely going hungry in the U.S., malnutrition in the U.S., and it's going to get much, much worse. But here it is. Anyway, Moving on, things are particularly dire for low-income workers. The same survey discovered that a whopping 78% of those who earn less than $50,000 per year are living paycheck to paycheck at this point. As I discussed last week, U.S. households that are feeling financial strain are increasingly turning to debt to make ends meet. And this has pushed debt levels to unprecedented heights. I talked about this probably a year and a half ago. And I said when times get more difficult, prices go up, people can't make ends meet, they can't live the lifestyle that they're used to living, they will start relying on debt. They'll start mortgaging their properties, they will start maxing their credit cards out to keep their standard of living up. But that can only last so long before that comes tumbling down. As economic conditions get worse, people are becoming more desperate. This is helping to fuel crime. This is helping to fuel a crime wave all over the nation, and retailers are being forced to implement extreme measures. According to the Washington Post, a giant food store in Washington, D.C. is actually going to be taking all Tide, Colgate, and Advil products off the shelves completely because theft has become such a problem. It is just a matter of time before we see armed guards stationed in grocery stores and on food trucks all over America. It'd be like banks and armored cars. People, armed guards guarding the food if there are any food to actually be guarding. Desperate people do desperate things, and right now we're seeing things happen that are absolutely nuts. And like I said before, and in many other videos, it's going to get worse. We're just now seeing the start. It's going to get much, much worse. And when we get to that tipping point, it's going to fall over the edge. It's going to be like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, in my opinion. We really are starting to become a Mad Max society. Of course, the truth is that the entire world is moving in that direction. Global supplies of food are getting tighter and tighter, and the recent spike in rice prices has created a tremendous amount of concern. Countries worldwide are scrambling to secure rice after a partial ban on exports by India cut global supplies by roughly a fifth. Global food security is already under threat since Russia halted an agreement allowing Ukraine to export wheat, and the El Nino weather phenomenon hampers rice production. Now, rice prices are soaring, and it's putting the most vulnerable people in some of the poorest nations at risk. Vietnam's rice export prices, for instance, have reached a 15-year high. Even before India's restrictions, countries already were frantically buying rice in anticipation of scarcity later when the El Nino hit, creating supply crunch and spiking prices. And a lot of people live on rice. It's a main staple food in a lot of Asian countries. Civil unrest has already started to erupt in various parts of Africa, but if current trends continue, things will get a whole lot worse around the globe in 2024. Are you prepared for what is ahead? Unfortunately, most people, like I said at the start of the video, aren't and refuse to prepare. They could go in, I think, and see the store shelves empty, and they would still think there was no need to prepare, even though it was past that point where they actually could. Right now, a lot of people are apparently asking that question. In fact, according to Zero Hedge, the number of Americans searching for the term live off-grid on the internet has hit the highest level in years. What's piqued our interest is the sudden panic by some Americans searching live off the grid on the internet, hitting the highest level in 5 years. The driving force behind finding a rural piece of land for dirt cheap, buying or building a tiny home, installing solar panels, and sourcing your own food and water might have to do with the worst inflation storm in a generation, while Democrat cities implode under the weight of soaring violent crime. But still yet, the vast majority of people aren't wanting to do anything, and these people here, the vast majority of doing searches on the internet, doesn't mean anything. They're just going to look, they're going to fantasize, they're going to dream, actually get out and do anything. Global leaders, in my opinion, have been making absolutely disastrous decisions for a very long time, and now we are all going to reap the consequences. And these disastrous decisions, in my opinion, are on purpose because they want this crash, they want depopulation, and this is all coming down from the globalist power masters that actually control the world. They come out and say it. I mean, look at their websites, read their literature, they say what they want to do. They want destabilization, so they can come in and offer the solution. The solution is going to be total enslavement. They want to lower the population by like 90%, and this is one way they're going to do that, by starving people to death, in my opinion. and making it where others, if you have food, you won't be able to afford food. Other nations aren't going to have any food at all. It's going to be complete starvation with no options, in my opinion, unfortunately. Here in the U.S., it could get to the point where there's no food on the shelves, but I think it's going to be more than likely that will happen later on, I think. No food on the shelves whatsoever, but I think more than likely it's going to be a slow collapse as far as the food supply goes here in the U.S. It's going to be to the point where people can't afford to buy the food. You won't be able to actually be able to afford to live and pay off your bills and things, and because of the inflation. But later on, I think there's going to be food insecurity and scarcity here in the United States also, but it will be in other poor nations first, as it always is, and it's going to gradually get over here to us. So we still have time to prepare. It's going to be more expensive now than it would have been a few years ago. So if you're watching this, please stockpile as much food as you possibly can. You don't have to get complicated with this. I mean, you can stockpile, if you can, rice now. I still see some on the shelves, beans, canned food, things like that, flour, cornmeal. Stockpile things that will last, that has a good storage life, and stockpile as much as you possibly can. You have to eat, and right now you're buying what you can get at the prices now. That price is going to increase over the months ahead. Do everything you can do, what you can afford to do right now. I know it's getting more difficult, but if you'd done this a long time ago, it would have been much easier and much cheaper to have been prepared for what's here and what's getting worse and worse as every day goes by. So do what you can, but mainly stockpile as much food as you possibly can. Get armed, because crime's going to go up, like I said before, and get ready, because it's going to get worse and worse. If you liked the video, give it a big thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Create more matter, and I'll see you all in the next video, hopefully.